I'd like to now recognize Mr. Good.
Thank you, Chairman Owens. Again, thank you to our witnesses for being here today. You know, this challenge of the suppression of the free exchange of ideas on campuses, the toleration, that's an interesting word, for freedom of speech on campuses is a relatively new phenomena. It's about maybe 30 years old, and it does seem to come almost exclusively from the left and the suppression of free speech on the right or the more conservative side. And it's ironic because it used to be that it was the left, it was the liberals, as they used to call themselves, who were the ones who had a terribly strong, in a positive way, commitment to free speech, free expression of ideas. You know, the old saying of, you know, I may disagree with what you have to say, but I will fight to the death for your right to say it. That's sadly long gone on our college campuses. Mr. Joner, a study from the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression found that over 60% of students on college campuses think that shouting down a speaker is an acceptable tactic to stop a campus speech, and 20% in the study said they considered it acceptable for people to use violence to stop certain speech. I personally experienced resistance to my right to free speech when invited to speak to a group of law students at the most prominent law school in my district recently. Mr. Joner, based on your experience, would you say that most of the students on campus that you interact with, whether it's at Stanford or other places you're familiar with, do they truly understand what it means to have the right to free speech?
I don't think that the average student, a majority of the students really understand what this principle of free speech means, and we're not seeing it clearly communicated at the university or taught. In Stanford's freshman orientation, which is a week before for all freshmen, you have 2,000 students, week-long of seminars. There's no discussion on free speech. I cannot recall anything I learned in there. So we're not seeing that, but we're seeing discussion on many of these other topics like diversity, equity, inclusion.
And at universities, and obviously Stanford is a highly esteemed university, that where we are supposed to be teaching students how to think, how to reason, how to persuade, and ideas and thought and viewpoints should hold up to the challenges of scrutiny and debate and so forth, and that is so absent on many of our campuses. How would you think we could address this? How do you think this can be addressed, free speech or the lack thereof on college campuses?
Yeah, well, first off, it's these incidents that we've seen across the country that are destroying this debate in the classroom, because students are too scared to speak up, and they know that if they say something, the university administration is going to come after them. Mm-hmm. And so what we need are these university officials to truly uphold these principles, and in the future demonstrate that we're not going to be in the cyclical cycle of this fallout, this incident where a speaker shouted down and then they apologize, and then months later or years later the same thing's going to happen again. That's only contributing to the cycle and this culture that is destroying free speech, and we need these university administrators who stand up for this and stand up for it once and for all and firmly.
Yeah, it's not just happening on a macro level with university policies that are retaliatory towards free speech, but also we get reports on a micro level where students will tell us that they have to change their academic content, what they write on papers and so forth, because they're told by professors, if you express a conservative worldview, you're going to get a bad grade. Numerous students have told me that personally. Mr. Shapiro, Stanford, not to pick on Mr. Joner, but published a list of words recently deemed harmful language that is racist, violent, or biased. And some of those words what Stanford published were American, freshman, she, and so forth. And even the term trigger warning was deemed to be too triggering. Free speech zones have been implemented at universities across the country, which effectively, as you know, prohibit free speech anywhere outside that zone, and often come with the requirements that you have to register to use the space. Could you comment on the impact that has, these kind of things have on the ability to learn when commonplace terms, common terms that we all would use are deemed politically incorrect or prohibited on a college campus? Yeah,
I've also seen, whether in that Stanford list or elsewhere, merit and excellence, academic rigor, these are forbidden things. Logic, reason, it's bizarre. You cannot have an institution of higher education if those things are forbidden. With respect to free speech zones, I actually encountered this when people were protesting me. At least I later learned they were protesting me a few weeks ago at the University of Denver, which is a private institution out there. And the dean, I think they just didn't want to make national headlines like Stanford has made, and that's a good goal for them to do. But they went overboard by shunting anybody who wanted to protest into these zones where I didn't even see them, and not allowing signs that weren't disruptive at all. So look, I believe strongly in the right to protest, but there's a difference between protest and disruption, time, place, and manner regulations, so you don't violate the fire code, all of these things like this. I think maximal speech is great, whether I agree with it or anybody else.
Yeah, we're sorry that you were victimized for expressing your viewpoint, and it's interesting, on a college campus, you're unqualified to be on a college campus. You were to define a woman, but you are qualified apparently to go to the Supreme Court if you can't just find what a woman is.
And my event in Denver was on the importance of free speech on college campuses.
Amazing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.